Okay.
Yeah, okay. The meeting is live stream.
Stand by. 5 seconds.
Got it. Tulis got it. Got it.
Got it. Jangan leave lah.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, we are live now. And so let me just tweet this for 1 minute. Clash of Empires.
Panas, pasang lah kipas.
Good evening. If you are watching this FORSEA dialogue on democratic struggles from Malaysia or other parts of Southeast Asia, I'm Zani. I'm based in UK. It's about 2 p.m. in London and
9 p.m. in Kuala Lumpur.
Yes. I have a distinct pleasure and honor to introduce my Malay brother, Ishamuddin Rees. And he actually, for many Malaysians and Southeast Asians, Isham really needs no introduction. He's a very well-known and very well-respected and occasionally controversial Malaysia human rights defender, Cold War era dissident, always taking the side of the people. He's also a theater activist and educator, and needless to say, he's a public intellectual, a columnist. And Ishan will share his thoughts and reflections on what he lived through as a young Malaysian activist during the Cold War period. And those of us who grew up, who came of age after or towards the end of Cold War, don't really understand or don't fully appreciate the weight and consequences of different imperialist powers, whether it's capitalist USA or communist the Soviet Russia. So Ishan will bring an invaluable first-person understanding of what it felt like living through the Cold War and what it was like to be pushing for democratization while being sandwiched by great powers. And today's discussion will have resonance with many of our friends and colleagues on the ground across Southeast Asia and South Asia as well. We are looking at Ukraine as essentially a NATO/USA versus the Russian Federation conflict, and we also have another major global power, the rising China, one of the richest economies in the world, the building and expanding its military capabilities to project its power across not just the Pacific, but the Indian and other parts of the global oceans. And so we need to look at what Beijing is planning to do. What are the moves that it is making around South China Sea, Taiwan, around Burma, Cambodia, Malaysia? So for that, I would like Isham to share his thoughts. Isham, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Zani. Thank you for inviting me to speak on the FORSEA Forum. Well, my personal experience of the Cold War, I'm not from Kuala Lumpur, but I'm from a real village, 70 kilometers, 70 miles from Kuala Lumpur. But the story goes this way. When I studied my first university education is in Kuala Lumpur, the capital city. Then I was told during the Cold War, Kuala Lumpur is the capital city then. Now is Putrajaya, another 40 kilometers from Kuala Lumpur, a new capital. But then Kuala Lumpur, the American embassy is right in the center of Kuala Lumpur, Jalan Ampang, on top of the AIA building. Then we have the Soviet Union capital embassy at Jalan Ampang also, which is on the ground. What happened is that both the diplomatic corps of the Russian and the American were not allowed to leave Kuala Lumpur more than 10 miles. At that time, we use miles instead of kilometers. We are still ex-British colony. So that's how restricted they are. At the same time, our passport is clearly defined, clearly stated there. You are not allowed to go to Russia. You're not allowed to go to China. You're not allowed to go to Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Israel. So that was that. And this is during the Cold War. So Malaysian is really restricted at that time. So this is, and today, my passport only categorically said that I'm not allowed to go to Israel. I can go to Australia, I can go to Russia, I can go to China, I can go to Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. So those days, Cuba also, I can go now. Those days are all the Soviet bloc, we are not allowed. So this is the tense of the Cold War. Malaysia is a small country at that time, population 8 million probably, but very, very important trading post, because we produce rubber, a strategic thing, and we produce tin, which is another metal that is strategic. So then it's become, we are ex-British colony. So then there was this power struggle. One must understand, in 1957, when the British left, the power, the vacuum was filled in by the United Malay National Organization, the political party, the ruling party. Yeah, they were there. So they have what kind of an arrangement. This is a military arrangement, what we call the five-power defense arrangement. The five-power: Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, and this is and United Kingdom. This is the five-power defense, and this we are under there. So as a matter of fact, the British, not until the early 70s that they totally left, because they still have their camp, and they still have their bases. And in Singapore, they have the military bases, they have the air force bases. So these are known. We are strategic, the Strait of Malacca, the most important waterways in Southeast Asia, where 3/4 of the world trades that go. Now it's more important so, because China is the factory of the earth. So this is that. So this is the background of that. And in this period, the anti-communist is very, very strong. I mean, when I entered the university at that time, I mean, to borrow books, to borrow even Han Suyin book, we have to register ourselves. Anything that is to do left, don't forget about books from Marx, Lenin, Mao, or Trotsky. This is impossible. This you need the permission from the Home Affairs Department. What happened is that otherwise the lecturer have to give you permission if it is part of your research or part of your dissertation. If you want to read it at your leisure time, no, there's no way you can do it. This is the atmosphere of the Cold War, and there's a tension going on, but at the same time, life goes on as well. Sometimes we have the American having the show in the University Malaya campus. Sometimes we have the Bolshoi Ballet coming in. So there are competition between the two superpowers. And this time, that's what we call the two superpower. So this is the background I'm giving to you, Zani. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just jump in here, because what you said is really important in Burma as well, right? My country of birth, now called Myanmar. Ne Win and his military dictatorship, they stayed out of this East-West Cold War struggle, and they try to basically milk both systems. They try to get as much possible as from the United States as well as from the Soviet Russia and Yugoslavia. They say like we are neutral, right? And but in the meantime, like in the university students and others, that they were heavily monitored in terms of the what they were reading, what they were discussing. And so I think because the Cold War was cold for the two preeminent powers at the time, the United States and USSR. It was cold, but it was hot for the rest of the world, and also because we do use the word war, and as you well know, one of the very first casualties in any war scenario is the is the truth, and that, you know, the pursuit of truth, trying to understand things. And so, you know, like in those days, those who live within the Soviet or Eastern Bloc, they have their own closed paradigm or framework of analysis, and those who live in the USA and Western Bloc, they have their own analytical or truth regimes. And now, like, you know, if you look at the Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there are all, you know, there's only one legitimate or acceptable way to discuss Russian invasion, right? And if you deviate from it, you are considered you are marginalized, or you're considered a traitor, you're considered a apologist of Putin. Can you talk about first the kind of hot wars that were occurring, or that were fought, or that were raging within this Cold War framework that you lived through firsthand as an activist?
Oh, at that time, there's the guerrilla movement, the Malayan Communist Party, there's the Thai Communist Party, there's the PKI, the Indonesian Communist Party, there's the New People Army, the Philippine Communist Party. These are parties, political parties, that is backed by China. So at that time, the global split is between what they call within the Marxist, the left-wing movement, between Marxist, Leninist, and Mao Zedong thought, and what we term at that time the revisionist Soviet Union. So this is the split within the left. The right is obviously pro-American. The right is obviously pro-American. The left is split within this, what we call the Soviet revisionists. At that terminology at that time, they have so-called revised the Marxism, Leninism, and now this Mao Zedong thought. So almost all Southeast Asia is within the sphere of the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. The Malayan Communist Party is conducting guerrilla warfare against the Malaysian government, so also the Thai Communist Party. But the Communist PKI, the Communist Party Indonesia, has been wiped out in 1965 coup d'etat by Suharto, when the great nationalist Sukarno was overthrown by the American-led coup d'etat. So the Philippine Communist Party is there. So this is the situation. So Soviet Union at that time, within the right, they are seen as communist. Both, they do not differentiate between the version of the Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, or the Marxism, Leninism of the Soviet Union. So to the right, everything is the anti-communist, and within the left, they split into this. So this is the atmosphere at that time. So the left movement and the progressive movement have taken side. Fortunately or unfortunately, the bulk majority of the Malayan at that time took side with the Chinese Communist Party. They become Marxist, Leninist, and Mao Zedong thought. Otherwise, in the West, they are called Maoists. So also the Thai Communist Party. So is also the Philippine Communist Party. The Indo-Chinese is quite different because they are having an open warfare at that time. Nixon bombing continuously in Laos and Cambodia. So there is no such thing, because Indochina, Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia, they have to play a very tough game. They are neither ideologically, they are both supporting, because if they are not suffered by the Soviet or the Chinese, they will collapse, they will be wiped out by the American. So this is the scenario at that time, which is only less than 2 hours flight from Kuala Lumpur. So this is the tension at that time. So and we can see that there's a pullback at that time in 1969. And there's a new coalition government in Malaysia. So they moved, the late Tun Razak moved to create what we call ZOPAN, Zone and Peace and Neutrality. And before this, you can see there's already the non-aligned movement, on the Afro-Asian non-aligned movement, which Tito Sukarno and Nehru created, and the Bandung Conference in 1955. So but at the same time, the same time, the whole thing, the Southeast Asia is in turmoil because the guerrilla movement. And the guerrilla movement is real, they're encroaching. And you must understand that the Malayan Communist Party, the Thai Communist Party, even the Burmese Communist Party at that time, the Philippines, they all have their exile leaders parked sometime in Peking. At that time, Beijing is known as Peking. And then we have Radio Peking blaming there. At the same time, the Malayan Communist Party have Radio Suara Revolusi, the voice of the Malayan Revolution, beaming from South China into Malaysia. So this is the situation at that time. The guerrilla is fighting all over. So this is the atmosphere at that time during the Cold War.
Yeah. But in terms of the Vietnam, the Indochina is made up of like basically all the French colonies, right? Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, primarily three different kingdoms or nation states, if you will. There have been like a new historians who argue that the Indochina conflict was essentially the continuation of the Second World War, because at the end of the Second World War, most of the British, the colonies regain independence, right, through negotiations or like a mass protest or like, the pressure from the colonized masses in places like India, Burma, now Pakistan and whatnot. But in the case of the French Indochina, the French refused to, give up the Indochina as their colonial possession, and the same with in Algeria as well, right? And that's another a very well-known and bloody case, in northern in Africa, like Algeria, the French Algeria. So what I want to point out is, when Ho Chi Minh was leading the national liberation movement against the French colonizers, the Ho Chi Minh and his team turned to the United States for help because the U.S. was, U.S. was making this, the U.S. was talking about the self-determination of the colonized people, right? But when push came to shove, the United States refused to help the Vietnamese national liberation movement. Instead, it backed the French colonizer to launch a major campaign to crush the liberation movement of the Vietnamese people. Remember, from the 1950s on, and then the Americans got involved because the Vietnamese the liberation movement became inseparable from progressive leftist movement. And then for the younger generations, I think national liberation movements drew their inspiration from progressive anti-imperialist frameworks and ideologies, right? And so those communist or socialist ideologies at the time, they were the only framework that allowed and enabled the colonized peoples around the world to understand their colonial predicament, right? And so can you bring us, work us through the French colonial war of repression in Vietnam, and also the American invasion and never declared officially a war against North Vietnamese socialist and communist movements. Okay. I was too young to remember the Vietnam War.
Yes, the whole thing is that the Vietnam War, it was the most important thing. If you recall what the French now term it as the almost revolution 1968, when President de Gaulle was almost overthrown by the youth. At that time, there was there was the left-wing movement. You know, you understand Daniel Cohn-Bendit or Alan Cravain or HDL. They are all these Marxists in one form or another. They were getting inspiration from the Vietnamese Revolution. If you recall categorically, Jane Fonda also came, I mean, to Hanoi to sing song and all that. So this is a movement. It's a global movement. Anti-war protest was an anti-war protest again. It was a clear against American imperialism. It was clear as daylight at that time. We have to take side. Where the French, this is the difference between the French and the English. The English, they are more subtle. They leave their colony. They leave their colony. One thing you must realize, no? The French, they mess around with the native. The English, they never mess around with the native. You cannot have anywhere else one whole pockets of British colony wherever they are, either in Zambia, in Kenya, no. But the French, yes, they go there, they intermarry. This is the characteristic of the French. And also in Algeria, they even consider Algeria as part of France, you know. So, but no, the British, they are so smart, they're so subtle. They allow the native they supported the native movement. Well, not the radical one, like in Malaysia, the United Malay National Organization. Even the names is in English, so not even a nationalistic way. They were given to them again vis-a-vis the nationalist movement, which is fighting in the jungle of Malaya, that Peninsula Malaya at that time. So they negotiate. But the French, there's completely different style. You see, this is different. They head-on collusion with the Ho Chi Minh. So the Ho Chi Minh managed to mobilize and created a broad united front, the national liberation struggle. And the national liberation struggle of the Vietnamese is a very important piece of the historical development in Southeast Asia and globally. And it influenced both in Europe, the youth, and also in America, the anti-war movement, the anti-Nixon movement, and this culminated in sometime in August when Nixon himself had to resign after the Watergate. This is part of it created a crisis within the ruling elite. Well, if you look at why Nixon had to resign, is because the elite themselves will have differences over how to handle Vietnam. That's basically what it's all about. So this is the crisis. So it is important. And Southeast Asia at that time is very difficult. We are all still under the power of the British. We are not sure. We are unable to make friends with the Vietnamese or Indo-Chinese. So I remember, and even in the non-aligned conference, yes, I remember categorically that Prince Sihanouk came, and so they were not welcome because they are scared. They're scared of being brutalized by the American vis-a-vis their foreign policy. So this is the situation. So a lot of the third world countries were not even allowed to express either support or condemn. They just have to take this. And this is, well, American. And if you recall, Thailand, the Philippines, Hong Kong, and Japan was used, and Malaysia at that time used as R&R. R&R is rest and recreation. When the GI went to Vietnam, 6 months they were there, they were allowed 1 month to R&R. They can choose either to go to Penang, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Manila, Hong Kong, or Tokyo. So this is R&R. In Malaysia, they're swarmed by GIs, you know. So prostitution, drugs start enlarging because they brought in their culture, you know. So I was forced, 1968 in Penang. It was my first experience. I met a black American army officer, and so they're called R&R, rest and recreation. I think for 1 month or 2 months. So this is the experience. There are lots of the Americans are not like they are not like the backpackers. They stay in hotel. They are resting themselves, and then they'll go back to Vietnam or to Laos or Cambodia, to wherever they are. So these are when they have been conscripted in the United States of America. So this is the situation. At the same time, the radicalization, the local also start radicalized. I remember categorically in the middle 70s, there start people objecting the arrival of American GIs. It's not even political, you know. The reason is the Muslim tendency against, because a lot of Malay girls become prostitute. Muslim Malay girls become prostitute, hanging around because there's a market. So At that time, you can recall now, Bangkok is become a real brothel, the city of bordello for the American GI, so it's Hong Kong. So this is the choice. So this is the cultural and was brought by the Vietnam War. At the same time, the politicization also is going on, not only in France, not only in UK, not only in America, but locally also people become to look as American imperialism vis-a-vis, again, the national liberation movement. And the national liberation movement really inspire. At that time, the progressive movement, the left-wing movement have a reference point. Either you are with Soviet Union as an example of a socialist economy, or China, which is emerging as a socialist economy. This is a choice. And that's the two superpower at that time is still Soviet Union and United States of America. The contention of the Soviet Union is creating the Cold War. China is just a little young brother to Russia at that time. But there's also an ideological clash between Marxism-Leninism and Mao Zedong thought.
Yeah, I think like, you know, we talked about the Peking's at the times involvement and support of you know, the different communist and socialist movements across Southeast Asia, and you know, like towards the end of the 1960s, the Beijing was openly you know, providing weapons, money, technology, you know, the sanctuary for the Burmese communists who were fighting Ne Win's regime, right? So basically, like China was supporting what they saw as you know, proxy communist movements across Southeast Asia, right? But
Right.
that doesn't make the Southeast Asian communists puppets of Beijing. Everyone was entering into some kind of calculated power equations with superpowers, right? But you know, if you look at Soviet Russia, Eastern Bloc, you know, that the GDR, the German Democratic Republic, you know, Bulgaria, Poland. But you know, by late 1950s, it became very evident. You know, even from within the top leadership of the Soviet Politburo, like Nikita Khrushchev, yeah, that they were starting to tell their own party members across Eastern Europe that Soviet Union under Stalin was one large prison camp. For you see what I mean? Like all these concentration camps, and so we are, you know, not here to whitewash and the what do you call it? Make excuses for the Soviet Union and its crimes. Now bringing the conversation to today's you know, the war in Ukraine. You know, I mean, like, you know, I mean, like, we unequivocally must condemn Vladimir Putin and its his crime of aggression. You know, that's a charge that the Nazi leaders at Nuremberg faced, the crime of aggression, or in other words, crime against peace. That's these are legal terminology. Now, you know, Professor Chomsky gave an interview to New Statesman, UK's progressive publication, just a few days ago, and the issue was out, where he talked about the importance of, you know, historical behaviors of these superpowers, you know, be they left wing or right wing. It doesn't matter. We are not loyal to any imperialist power. We want to live as free and independent and self-respecting people wherever we are. And so Chomsky said, you know, the current narrative around the Russian invasion, you know, is condemnable and must be condemned. But at the same time, like, the mainstream Western narrative is psychologizing the reason. They all put it to, you know, Vladimir Putin. Yeah, let's look at Putin's mind and what's deep inside his mind, you know, and so as if, like, you know, the entire country could be moved by a single mind. You see what I mean? Like, with no structural, no institutional, no geopolitical analysis.
Yeah.
Just say Putin is just war criminal, a thug. He's just evil, like Hitler. Yeah, even Hitler could not have, done
That
what
ability.
he did by alone. I mean, by himself. So can you like share your thoughts on this sort of the mainstream Western media narrative where Putin is evil and the Americans and NATO are defending democracy and liberal values, and Putin is just like like Hitler,
Yeah.
and then also Biden talked about the Ukraine war as a war between autocracies of the world and democracies of the world, right? Because democracies were also invading other countries, like Iraq, the second invasion, and then all democracies are also not supporting democratic movements around the world if supporting those movements doesn't advance their economic or geopolitical agendas. Like look at the Burmese struggle today. We don't receive any support from any democracy beyond lip service and ineffectual sanctions. And so can you share your thoughts on this sort of narrative?
You see, when 24th of February, when Putin declares special operation, but the things goes further than that. It goes back. This is where my criticism on the Western media. There are few things that I will raise up. It goes back to what happened in Maidan. You see, 8 years ago, there was a coup d'etat. The coup d'etat was supported. I mean, that diplomat, Victoria Nuland, categorically said that Americans spent $5 billion to create an atmosphere supporting NGO, supporting dissident, supporting political party to overthrow Viktor Yushchenko government. Well, of course, I mean, I'm not saying that that's the best government on this planet Earth, but at least it's democratically elected under the cover of trying to de-engage the oligarch, the people who are on it. But behind it actually is the fascist Azov movement. They are the one who created a lot of the havoc that shoot and kill. They were armed, or a lot of the people. Yes, the Ukrainian came. I mean, professional students. They came peaceful demonstration. But the Azov, these are paramilitary groups that supported. And you must know, where is they now? They are so influential. There is also a battalion that's operating in the Donbas region. Also, when Putin said that denazification, this is what he meant by denazification. When there was also, I was just looking at even BBC, even some of the Western media were trying to wrote about the danger of the new right of the fascist movement, the remnants of the Second World War. And this is in this current narrative, this all disappeared. And one more most important thing that has not been discussed is 1962. What happened in Cuba? What happened in Cuba? Between at that time, John F. Kennedy, at that time, Khrushchev in Soviet Union. I mean, there was a report, intelligence report, that the Russians are slowly transporting or shipping in missile into Cuba. Well, Cuba has almost similar statement. We are a foreign country. We have the right to sign military arrangement with another. It's the same thing what Zelensky is saying now, but the West. But this is unacceptable because it threatened. It's only 90 kilometers from Cuba to American soil. So it's threatened the security. But this was not raised up. This is not make comparison or similarity between what happened now. So what happened now? So what is actually, yes, we condemn the aggression, we condemn the war now. But at the same time, because it created, I think, almost 2-3 million refugees now, splintered all over Europe. But at the same time, the NATO keep on encouraging. At the same time, they say we want to stop the war. At the same time, they are sending more weapons. So in the end, it was the Ukrainian that died. the Ukrainian cities that destroyed. So what is happening now? So the West, okay, I'm not going to engage and indulge in the racism of the media, trying to show the white refugee versus Iranian refugee or versus Syrian. I'm not into that. I'm just concerned about them not coming back, looking at the historical development before Putin started his special operation or his attack on Ukraine. There are historical. The history itself, there is historical development earlier than that. So these are not the, and you look at Crimea, for example, 1955, there's a crisis in the Soviet Union between Ukraine and Soviet Union, Moscow. So what happened? Khrushchev decided to give Crimea. So Crimea was actually part of old Russia, and to go to engage and to describe Putin as one man show, as you have described, Zani. No, I mean, they was trying to frame him like exactly what they framed Saddam Hussein, Hitler, the new Hitler, or mental, or all these things. And yes, so you can, Putin also is now been described. As a matter of fact, you can see Condoleezza Rice saying that, oh, this Putin has lost his trolley, you know, don't know what he's up to, you know. And at the same time, if you recall, just a week ago, President Biden is in Poland. He make it, this guy must go. Was it? I mean, come on, this guy what was there? Yes, must go. So that is in his mind. So, but at the same time, they are arming the Ukrainian. So I can see now the situation like this is also a danger now, because we have similar situation in Southeast Asia. Now I'm coming back, where that is Taiwan, which is claimed by China. So this is the situation. Now we're coming to geopolitics, the comparison between Cuba and America, Soviet Union and America. Now we're going to have Taiwan, America, and China. So these are the things. So I think the time is now to discuss categorically this before the war, because I'm not sure where it's headed now, you know, where the war. But the thing is that we had just had the COVID-19 pandemic. Now it's become endemic in Malaysia. It be declared 1st of April, it be declared endemic. But the economy is still topsy-turvy. It's not that. So inflation is on the rise. So and now we come to the war. So the war is created in that situation. So I'm not sure how these leaders, our leaders, you know, at the same time, IPMC, have come out, the global report is very, very scary. Within 3 years, if we do not do anything at all, the world is going to collapse. There's good. So the disaster. So these are the situation. We have economic disaster, pandemic, and the global collapse of the global warming. So these are the crises. At the same time, China and Taiwan. So this is, I want to bring you to the situation on China and Taiwan.
Yeah, you know, like last week, I think like a Friday, the Burmese military sent its representative, ex-colonel Wana Maoluen, who was, foreign minister at the time of the early bouts of Rohingya, genocidal violence against Rohingya people in 2012. Now he has been appointed since the coup foreign minister for the military, and he went to Beijing and had official meetings with Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister or top foreign policy leader there. And for the first time since the coup in February last year, the Beijing expressed, this is the official word, unconditional support for the Burmese military, right? The Burmese military is armed also by Russia and China, both of them, and then these two countries export, about 85% of Myanmar military's arms purchases from around the world, right? 85% of arms that are used by the Burmese military to kill dissidents and activists and ethnic minorities come from Russia and China. And so in my view, I think the Chinese Communist Party leadership telling the visiting Burmese foreign military's representative that we will support you unconditionally. It's it's a clear signal to the United States. Basically, we are seeing the re-emergence of what, you know, political scientists and international relations experts refer to as spheres of influence, right? So like we are like China's backyard. You know, we have like 1,400 miles long Sino-Myanmar borders, and so like, you know, the Burmese democracy movement is now fighting tooth and nail to overthrow this, you know, genocidal military rule for the last 60 years. And China is saying, we're going to support you dictatorship, you know, the Burmese military. And so this is in addition to the China's making military threats, overt threats to retake the Republic of Taiwan. And then you've got, I mean, North Korea that also enjoys support from China, you know, and the Americans know that to try to get anything out of North Korea, they need to keep China on their side. But now you've got like, you know, China, Taiwan Straits military possibilities or prospects for military confrontation. And then the Burmese in a full-fledged armed revolution, China taking one side, and the Americans are making, you know, paying lip service to democratic struggle. And then you've got like, you know, the Malaysia is a claimant country among the 4 claimant countries over South China Sea. And then you've got the, you know, the Beijing's economic takeover of different smaller economies in South Asia and Southeast Asia. I mean, look at what's happening in Sri Lanka today. You know what I mean? And so, can you share your thoughts on what we would now call China's imperialism? You know,
okay,
across Asia.
Okay. The thing is that in Malaysia, yeah, as I'm talking to you with the experience, yeah, in so far as China is concerned, they're trying to play down. Okay, number one, among the old left, the progressive, they are not yet sure categorically definition of China. Is China an imperialist country or China is not? And in so far as Malaysia is concerned, there's this split because there's a Chinese community. There's the last night I just went to see a screening of the Revolution is Here, a film of Hong Kong youth and people of Hong Kong revolution against the CCP, which is, well, it is a closed door screening, which is not allowed to be publicized. I mean, I was even told by the organizer that even the police and the Minister of Home Affairs wanted to know about it. So I was interviewed by the national media, Bernama, the National Agency of Malaysia. I told them this is a thing that we need to discuss openly, to discuss whether this debate. There's not much debate now in Malaysia because they're trying to, because of the relationship with the Chinese. But let me tell you, okay, let's go one country first before I go to Malaysia. Let's look at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, how this is what we call one belt, one road. This is the project. Actually, this is a debt trap, you know. I mean, you can see that this thing, Sri Lanka is caught up in this. I mean, how a place, a port, which is completely have been suggested as is economically non-viable, but it was created and money was borrowed from China, and then Sri Lanka is unable to pay, and it's become part of China. 99 years are leased to China. I mean, 99 years is basically it's a colony of China. And then the same thing is happening in Colombo, the main port of Colombo. This is just, I mean, in Pakistan, you can see the Gwadar, which is out. I mean, last month, there was a revolt that some of the Chinese workers were killed because they were promised, Imran Khan promised that the Gwadar, also one belt, one road, it will be developed. But then the fishermen realize that the fish have gone to China. Everything is gone to China. Even their water is taken by the Chinese workers. So this is what happened. So the people revolt. So now it's suspended. So this is an example. This is just South Asia example. And in the Philippines, I mean, there's on South China Sea, there's the claiming of Spratly Island and Parcel Island. So this claiming of this island, yeah, there's Brunei claim it, Malaysia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Taiwan also. This is the Spratly Island in the south and the Parcel Island in the north. What China is doing now, China is creating military bases there. So this is and they're just ignoring. Yes, ASEAN tried to make a conference on this, but with China, but it was not working, you know, because China have this is partly because it was told that this place is rich in petroleum and gas, so and also the fish. So there's always happening a crisis between China and Philippines. So Philippines is the one. In Malaysia, this is very, very low key, but China is having an interest in Malaysia. Let me tell you, the famous case of 1MDB, where the last prime minister was charged and supposedly to go to prison for 12 years, is still on trial now. What happened is that the background here is Zhou Lo, a Chinese guy who is actually, I term it as an agent of the Red China. So he's the one who's meddling and creating this. And where is Zhou Lo now? Zhou Lo is in safe haven in China. I'm not sure whether in Beijing, Shanghai, or what, but China is protecting. I mean, last year, before the IGP, the Inspector General Police, resigned, he made a statement before that. Now you have a new IGP, but before that, he said that in a short time, we will bring back Zhou Lo to stand trial. Until today, you know, I don't know what happened in between his statement and now. He was so sure. I'm sure he got the information or where. China is hoping. Let me tell you, China is also banking, supporting the old prime minister, hoping that he'll come back. If you remember, the One Belt, One Road initiative, the railway line, it was cancelled by the new government, by Mahathir, was cancelled. And there's a lot of projects which China is involved in. And the famous project is in the south, in between Singapore and in the Strait of Malacca, the island, the forest city, you know. After the collapse of Evergrande, you know, the whole thing, the building industry of China collapsed. So this is a lot of project is now on hold. China is no longer investing. So this is the situation. But for me, China is interfering, really interfering in the domestic. I can assure you, interfering in the domestic affair of Malaysia. And this is not being raised up. For example, by keeping Zhou Lo. This is just one example. This man is the wanted man. Interpol wanted a red alert, but China is protecting him. Why? Because in the hope this guy will become the linkage between the new government, the old government with Communist Party of China. So this is happening. So this a lot of, so it's not being raised up openly. It's only people, me privately talking or publicly talking like this. But in terms of the mainstream Malaysian media, it's not given the analysis, the role of Zhou Lo, the role of Communist Party of China, and the role of Xi Jinping. You must understand, the United Malay National Organization, before the Communist Party of China have a relation with the Malayan Communist Party, now the Communist Party of China have a relationship with the United Malay National. They were there. It was solidarity. So China is not. So I told publicly, I said, the British created Malaya become to plant rubber. We become the British rubber plantation. China will turn us into the durian plantation. This durian is the fruits, you know. So now they start, like 2 weeks ago, that issue that Chinese company have bought 2,000 acres of land in Kelantan, the east coast of Malaya, where the local people are unable to have land. But how did the Chinese company were able to? So this is the thing. So they are using corruption, corrupt official, they're using money, and this is the methodology that's going on. One by one, this is going in the Philippines, this is going on in Sri Lanka, this is going in Pakistan. I mean, you look now, I mean, what's Sri Lanka is almost collapsed, unable to pay the debts. And what's going to happen? You have just lock, stock, and barrel. The whole country will go to China. So this unfortunate. And the same thing in Indonesia. Jokowi has been very aware about there's a railway line, that's being so this aware one. So this is what is most important is that to make the people aware publicly, because the progressive, is not. I mean, people, some known internationalists will say, oh no, they were not. They were okay. They were easily clear to say American imperialism. Yeah, but to China, they were a bit edgy, oh, maybe not. But for me, it's so clear. I mean, it's after the fall of the Gang of Four, after the death of Mao Zedong, China is no longer Communist Party of China. It's a capitalist party. 97 members of the Communist Party is billionaires, and they're encroaching all over South Asia. And the characteristic of imperialist country is the same. A capitalist system, they want land, they want market, they want people. So this is the same. The law of capitalism there's no such thing exceptional to China. The law of capitalism work either in Soviet Union, in America, or anywhere, or in Saudi Arabia for that matter. It's the same. The law of capitalism work. You want profit, maximization of profit. You want to get land. You want capital. And you need to go. So this is happening now. So I think Southeast Asia going to face. So I observe what happened in Latin America, how the concept of the banana republic was created. So finally we become durian republic, but Malaysia is not a republic. We become durian plantation here, because that's what China now. They want to plant durian. The British want us to plant rubber. China want us to plant durian to supply. So this is what happened. So we become really the backyard. In Malay household, there's this allotment, in London, you have the allotment. So in Malay, perak, where you plant a little bit of chili, a little bit of turmeric, a little bit of this, a little that. When you want to cook, you go behind that to your allotment and pick it up. So this is what China is going to do to Southeast Asia. They're going to do that to Vietnam, to Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Philippines. So now, but the situation is the geopolitics now is changing. You must, as I've said just now, there's a 5-power defense arrangement, which the ex-British colony is that. But there's Quad. There's Quad, if you remember, There's Quad.
Yes, Australia, Japan, India, and USA.
Yeah, USA, that's Quad. But then there's also ANZUS, Australia, New Zealand, and US. So these are all the power arrangement. But you must understand, during Obama, the foreign policy in Southeast Asia was pivot Southeast Asia, But I'm not sure now Biden is concentrating on Ukraine. I'm not sure how they're looking at China. No. But China is now opportunistically looking. But there is really a similarity between Cuba, Ukraine, and Taiwan. So this is, the media is not, some media, yes, but looking at it, this is similarity. I'm sure and South China Sea.
Right. Yeah, in the last or the latest issue of Foreign Affairs, that's the publication from the Council of Foreign Relations, the establishment, publication from the United States for foreign policy. There is an article or analysis that argues that, Europe really is a sideshow, what's happening in Europe, but the real deal, the power of the economic power and military power, is shifting towards Asia, right? Asia is the most basically, the most dangerous, geopolitical confrontational ground, because even like Biden pulling out of Afghanistan, which was also supported by the Republicans under Donald Trump, right? And the Biden executed the withdrawal plan, but it was Donald Trump who signed the withdrawal agreement. And and so it's, the U.S. foreign policy is always generally bipartisan, right? There's very little difference, and also the United States. Today's, this year's budget that Biden requested for defense is over 700 billion.
Yeah, 700 billion.
And the 4 or 5 times greater than what China spends per annum. So, but are they going back? Picking the I was listening very closely to what you're saying. China talks about non-interference, respecting sovereignty, like harmony as opposed to conflict. But that's just a Communist Party's rhetoric, or like even like CCP is only communist in name. It's a state capitalism, right? And then so as such, China is actually already in the contest for land, cheap labor, resources, and control of trade routes and sea lanes. All of that, is euphemistically termed as great power rivalries, right? But that's making this imperialist contest between the U.S. and China, U.S. and Russia, respectable. It's basically the Second World War. It was not about fascism versus democratic liberalism, right? Like you could not claim to be defending freedom and democracy while you were holding, like national communities as your colonies. It just doesn't square. You know what I mean? And you can't. Like Britain was saying like, oh yeah, fight on the side of freedom, but it was holding 800 million Indians in bondage of colonialism. The same in Malaya, the same in Burma, right? So like Gandhi wrote to Hitler, like, the Christian European colonialism was no different from your fascism. We are opposed to all of you. You see what I mean? Yeah. And so I think like, what our fellow Asian activists need to understand is that this ideological smoke screen that European Union and United States and NATO are defending democracy and liberalism, whereas in fact countries like Russia are just simply evil. Basically, all imperialism, whatever forms or manifestations, whichever corner of the earth it may come from, we have to oppose imperialism, whether it's Chinese imperialism in our backyard, or like, from the United States 10,000 miles away, or like from Moscow. Imperialists are bad for humanity, especially against the backdrop of what you said about the climate change. We are no longer going to be able to cap the global warming at 1.5 degrees centigrade. There's no way. Yeah. And so I think what is your final thoughts on educating and mobilizing fellow activists across Asia in this imperialist triangular war that is happening?
So insofar as American imperialism, insofar as Soviet or Russian imperialism, this is clear. But in Malaysia, I'm talking about Malaysia, but insofar as the Chinese as capitalistic, because it's still under the cover of the Communist Party. There are some people there in Malaysia. I categorically tell there are Chinese who, the old left, who are sympathetic to mainland China for whatever reason,
like our old friend Wapiao.
Yeah. So it's there. So they are not objectively observing. They are not objectively looking at China as the Communist Party of China as a Communist Party of China. They were able to accept the Soviet Communist Party before as revisionist, but they no longer accept Chinese Communist Party as revisionist. So they have abandoned Marxism-Leninism. They have gone. So as capitalist country, it become imperialist. So imperialist country. So this is so what happened is that the danger in Malaysia is that because there's the Chinese community, there's the Malay community. So if I am a Malay, if I take anti-China, they will be seen that I am anti-China because I am a Malay anti-China, because there are people in Malaysia who's anti-China. But I'm not anti-China because it's China. I'm anti-China because it's imperialist country. So that because I was once before in fact, I was pro-Beijing. As a matter of fact, I was pro-Beijing. I supported Beijing. In fact, all what's going on during the Mao time. But now, so this is the thing. So what we needed here now, I think, in Southeast Asia is all the parties to come together to really concretize and what is actually, how do we look, how we handle, because we are a small country, Malaysia, Thailand, the Burma, Indo-Chinese states, Indonesia, with the exception of Indonesia is big, the rest are all small. So how are we going to look at it? ASEAN did try, particularly vis-a-vis the question of South China Sea. They have a meeting, but I mean, the Den Haag had declared what China claimed was not valid, but China just refused, it just refused to say, because I mean, like any big power, like American, who refused, I mean, the Security Council passed year in, year out, they just ignore it, the same thing like what happened in Israel, just American ignore it. So the same thing, China now is behaving exactly in the way. So this is the thing that I think Latin America experienced with China. I mean, I've just heard that the fishing boat of China, as far as Peru, I mean, not only South China Sea, it has moved away as far as Peru. If this is not imperialist, I don't know what it's called. You go to other people to steal their fish. I mean, that is really far out, jauh far away, as the Malay would say. So this is the situation. So the situation now, we need to come together to understand and to concretize. But I know lots of books have been written, but specifically the experience, and the experience how, and also the same thing, the sensitivity. Like vis-a-vis in Malaysia, very sensitive area, sensitivity about China whether because there's 20%, 30% of the Malay population, whether the China. But I was so happy last night when I see the cinema, the screening hall was packed. But I think a lot of them were younger Chinese generation, but mostly maybe they're educated in Taiwan. They flocked to see the experience of the Hong Kongers struggle for democratization, which is good. So now I think we have to also work together for enlightenment, for clearly to engage people. Now, the Taiwanese should come to the fore to explain their experience. And you must understand, in Malaysia, who claim to be a Muslim country, Pakistan, who claim to be Muslim country, Saudi Arabia, all this OIC, Organization of Islamic Conference, they did nothing. They say nothing about the Uyghur. I mean, how many? 1 million people have been in prison in Uyghur, and then there was all the thing that, and then at the same time the Falun Gong people. Now it's not only Muslim, it's the Falun Gong and also the Christian. There's the Buddhist. So assault on religion. So I mean, insofar as Malaysia is concerned, I mean, I know the Chinese Communist Party invited all the religious department of Malaysia, Thailand, all that to go and visit. Okay, it's a show, this is done before, during the Soviet times, done during, this is a show. They prepared, people are happy, re-education camp, it's not even, this is not concentration camp, but the genocide is real. I mean, I was really looking at it, how a 700 years old temple, Buddhist temple, demolished. I mean, this is historical heritage. It does not belong to China. It belongs to the global world citizen. The same thing in the Bamiyan province before, when the Buddhist temple was blasted by the Taliban. The whole world make noise about it. But they do not make noise about the 700 years older. So these are the things that you see. But at the same time, we look at it. The Chinese are infiltrating American. The businessmen, they are business because big money, because China is the factory of the earth, so all that. So you can see this, how these people, even Facebook willing to compromise. Or they're willing to compromise. YouTube willing to compromise, but they're not willing to compromise with Russia, but they're willing to compromise China, the market, and you can see all these people making money. So at the same time, so we have to really engage this, and I think there is still time, but at the same time, as I've said just now, the global warming is coming up, our deadline now. So I mean, this is the crisis that we're having now. The geopolitics is real, and at the same time, the climate crisis, the climate emergency also is real as daylight.
Yeah, so I think like, the compared to what you lived through as a young dissident in the 1950s and 60s, we have an added and existential crisis, which is the global warming, right? And all these leading nations of the world that have massive economic, military, and Security Council political clout, they are pursuing, politics as usual, which is like competition for land, resources, cheap labor, like a dominance, preeminence of their power, whatnot, right? And so, uh, sorry, so I think like, it is imperative that the many of us younger generation activists and those younger than our generations, they need to essentially develop a new anti-imperialist set of values and outlooks, right? It's no longer enough to be Democrat for your country or my country.
Danny, I'll interject here. You see, we used to have the tools. We use Marxism, Leninism as the tool. But now they should have the same tool. But now there's something to add up. The new technology, techno-fascism is coming in. So this, I am not into the technology. It's past my generation. But the new thing now that's coming out, the internet, the TikTok, which is dominated by China, all these things. So they have to really, the younger generation, finally, I always say that finally the world belongs to the young people, So we are just here on a borrowed time. So what happened is that there should be emerging new analysis, with new tools, with the technology, I mean, the look at it. Okay, I've seen some of the documentary on how China used technology for social control, and they are exporting this. They're exporting this not only to Malaysia, they're exporting this to UK, globally, because it's cheap. So the police department in Los Angeles, the police department in London is using this. It's a tool for surveillance tool, and these are, so we don't know what is there at the very early stage. 10, 15 years ago, we heard that if you buy a computer from China, they put something there, the Chinese will know. Now it's clearly Huawei is there, Vivo is there. So all these things. So this is, we have to have new tools to fight imperialism. But we must go back another step. I mean, I know who's the guy who wrote The End of History, Fukuyama. Fukuyama have said that the end. No, like you said just now, the continuation of the Vietnam War. This is a continuation to the never-ending struggle. I mean, theoretically, he said that it's the end of history. The liberal democracy take over the world. No, it's not. The battle, the contradiction is still the same. I mean, it's still contradiction. The basic contradiction between exploit and the exploiter is still the same. The oppressed and the oppressor's same. Between colonized, the colonizer is still the same. So nothing have changed really. So the way, the methodology, yes, the methodology, we can have new mood, a new style, like now we are talking, you are in London, I'm in Kuala Lumpur, we can discuss things, and other people in Burma, India, everywhere can listen to our discussion. This is the new technology. I welcome this. I always thanks Ronald Reagan to liberate the internet for the populace, So it was a military hardware. Now everybody can use it, but also there's a bad side, there's a good side. We must utilize it for the liberation of humankind.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very inspiring note to end our conversation on. You've been listening to a very well-known and highly respected Malaysian dissident, the theater activist, human rights defender, and the columnist, Hishamuddin Rees. And
I'd like to interject something there. I also once experienced, not many people know, I was also in the lockup in Moscow. Yeah, I was.
Tell us about that.
That's another story. I was also locked up in Moscow. That's my experience in the Russian lockup. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and have a very pleasant evening to all of you.
It's Ramadan here in Kuala Lumpur. It's Ramadan now in the Muslim world.
Yeah. So you just had iftar.
Yeah, I just had my dinner. Thank you very much, all my friends around the world. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Isham.
Happy Iftar.